heard me.
Yes.
I am in love with you. And I know that love is just a shout into the void, and that oblivion is inevitable, and that we're all doomed, and that one day all of our labors will be returned to dust. And I know that the sun will swallow the only earth we will ever have. And I am in love with you. Sorry.
And I cannot wait to tell you guys what's been going on. I'm sorry I did not post last week with any details of like, hey, not gonna post, but we were out of town. We went to Llano, Texas. Well, we went to Kingsland and Llano and did some adventuring, checked out Inks Lake and many other natural beauties in the hill country part of Texas. If you're not familiar, Texas is a very large state, and every region is very unique and different. We have desert and high desert, we have swamplands, hill country, flatlands, coastal regions. It's just a very diverse state, and there was lots to do and lots to see last week. And suffice it to say, I was not able to post a video besides the very short one of us hiking around Inks Lake yesterday, that I posted from last week. So yeah, didn't do very much as far as podcasts, but I, having been away for 2 weeks, did make some progress on my whips. So I'm very excited to share with you guys what I got done, although it's not exactly very cohesive. There was a little bit of sampling and appetizer style knitting with some focus towards the end of this past week in terms of trying to get one of my whips finished. So lots of exciting stuff has been happening in the past 2 weeks, both in like my family life as well as my knitting life, and so I can't wait to show you guys all of the new stuff and talk about the things that we did. So if you are interested in an update and seeing what's new around here, stick around and we'll get started. Quick warning before we jump into all of the episode is just that my husband is playing with my daughter, and he's actually, well, he's hanging out with her and he's practicing guitar. So if there is much noise from them hanging out together, I apologize. As I've mentioned before, our house is not huge, so we just make it work with the space we have. I am filming a little bit later, and I apologize if I'm a little scattered. We had my uncle in town for the past 2 days. He lives in France, and when they come to the US, they fly in and stay with us, and then they use our home as like their launch pad into the rest of Texas and the rest of their adventures while they're here. And so even though it was wonderful, and I love that we get first dibs on my uncle because we don't see him that often, it definitely impacted, like I wasn't expecting to have house guests for 2 days. I thought they would fly in, spend the night, and get on the road, and that wasn't exactly the case. So I'm a little disorganized, but I did spend a few minutes rounding up my whips and thinking about what I wanted to say. So hopefully we're fairly cohesive. But if we're not, then just scrap it up or chalk it up to being the way things usually are around here, right? A little ADD. Anyway, enough about that. I think the first thing I want to show you guys is something that's actually been hanging out in the background for the last couple of videos, and here she is. This is my little friendly Annie doll. I made her a couple months back. I saw a pattern on, I think I was either perusing Instagram or Etsy, and I saw this little fawn doll. Her name is Friendly Annie. I don't remember the creator's name, but she's from Ukraine. And there's a lot of amazing pattern developers in Ukraine, and especially since everything's been going on, it's nice to support independent makers and designers. And so I'm glad that I had this pattern. I pretty much followed exactly their color palette for her. She's got these like cute little spots on here to represent her little fawn coat, and she's got a little bit of a floppy head, but I just love her. This is one of my very first yarn under makes. So if you're familiar with crocheting, you know that there's yarn over or yarn under. If you didn't know that, I will link some videos that talk a little bit about the difference of that, but it is a less natural stitch technique for me, and so this did take a while to make. It was a little harder on my hands, but I love just like how tidy the stitches are. They're nice little like squares. I learned a new way to do her little eyelashes, which I love the look of that, and will probably incorporate that into all of my dolls going forward. But I just think that this little design is so precious, such attention to detail. I have mentioned in previous podcasts that I am left-handed, and so the one thing I will say is that if you're left-handed and you follow this pattern, just keep in mind that there is some translation work that you have to do when you assemble this doll. You work from the feet up, and then you attach the arms, and the hat is a separate item. But when you're connecting the legs, for example, the pattern calls for you to work in one direction, but if you know, as a left-hander, most crochet happens in the reverse direction if you crochet in a traditional left-handed fashion. So if you are left-handed, keep that in mind, but it's not anything complicated, and if you've ever made any dolls or toys before, this will be fairly easy to figure out on your own. I don't know that I would recommend it for a very first amigurumi style doll project, but she is very cute and I would recommend the pattern. I am looking forward to making another version of her with maybe a twist on the fawn look, maybe different colors, and so yeah. But she's been hanging out in the background, and I wanted to introduce her to you guys and let you know where you can find this pattern. I will link it. It was an Etsy purchase, but I imagine it's on Ravelry. If I do find it on Ravelry, I will post that pattern as well, but this pattern was purchased before I was even familiar with Ravelry. So anyway, that's enough said about her. Okay, I will keep the next section very brief. These are also FOs, but I wanted to share about them because I did something unusual this past week. I've been wanting to do it for a while. If you spend any time on YouTube and you're a maker of any sort, you are probably getting ads for Michael's Maker Place. And I've been getting ads and thinking like, I would be interested in trying that. I don't think I'm gonna, like make a fortune on it. I don't even expect it to be a real business plan for me, but I have several finished dolls hanging around my house. This little she's not a T-Rex, what is she, Triceratops, and she's been hanging around in my house. Very soft. I love this particular yarn and these colors are great, and I just thought, you know what, I might as well post her and see if I can get any interest in her. I did have her for sale at a farmer's market recently, but because the yarn is so small, the stitching is so tight, I am charging a little bit more for her than some of my other creations, and so she didn't get snapped up. And so I thought, okay, I'll post her and see if anybody has any interest. I also thought it would be kind of fun to include you guys in on the process of what it's like to list on a maker's place such as the one that Michael's hosts. So she is now live. I will include a link for her. I also included this little one. I don't know, I think this is technically a Velociraptor pattern. It didn't turn out as great as I had hoped, but she's very fun. She's a marled yarn pattern, or I guess configuration. She's hot pink, and if you're familiar with Texas colors and football, maybe you might recognize the Longhorn orange color that's in part of her. She's also got like a very light pink and a light yellow in here. So these are lots of yarn colors combined to make this marled effect, and just lots of randomness. I don't know if she'll sell because although she is very cute in a weird dinosaur kind of way, I don't know that she's everybody's cup of tea. So I did have her listed at a lower price than my little Triceratops, and we'll see if anybody wants her. She's available for adoption if you know anybody in your life that wants a pink and orange yellow dino. So I will link these, but I thought I would share with you guys that I am posting these, and also to let you guys know the process of setting up a maker's account with Michaels, because I was kind of surprised at the process, and I don't want to share too much about it here because I think I will do another video, but I did want to show you guys that these are available if anybody needs a dinosaur in their life. 2 weeks ago, almost immediately after I finished filming and posting my last full-length podcast, I started and finished this. And you might be asking, what is that besides possibly curtains? It's not curtains. It is a hair, I think it's called a Harem jumpsuit. Hara? I'll have to look it up again, but it's a little jumpsuit for my Pearl. That's my daughter. She is almost 6 months, which I cannot believe, but I love a toddler in a cute little jumpsuit like this. They're not dungarees, they're not overalls. I have not really gotten to the bottom of what the main difference is, but I knew I had to have one for her. So I found this pattern on Etsy. I tried to look on Ravelry, but there's no sewing patterns there. And so I found this, and I thought I could probably do that. Now, I am not a sewist or a seamstress. Like, I have sewn before, and I think I had mentioned in previous episodes that I was interested in making something for her, but it's not my normal jam. I think the last real big thing I made for myself, I sewed the wrong side to the right side, and that was it. I was like, no more. I'm not sewing. This is not for me. My ADHD and dyslexic brain, this is not it. But I was really happy with this process and the product, and it truly was a product make. I did get it knocked out in about 3 days. I spent the first day cutting everything and pinning it all and getting everything lined up, reading through the pattern. The second day I spent doing all the sewing. I got a late start, so it bled into the third day to finish up the straps and the button band here for the legs and diaper access. And on the third day I sewed on the little popper snaps that are for the top part and the bottom part. I want to say that actually took as much time as, sorry, there's like traffic going by, but I can't close the windows. It's so beautiful outside, and it's gonna get really hot in here if I do. So but yeah, the hand sewing took as long as the whole rest of the project put together, but I am so satisfied that it is done. She has worn it several times to show off to family and friends, and as long as you put enough popper buttons down here on the bottom panel, it does stay shut. When I tried it on the first time, I'd only had 2 buttons sewn on, and it kept popping open, but now that we've got 5, it's good to go, and she looks so cute in it. I will post some pictures here in the video so that y'all can see what she looks like wearing it. Obviously, I'm not going to show her face or anything. Not that it matters, because I feel like babies' faces change so much, but privacy and whatnot. So I'm keeping my cute baby to myself, you guys. So I just shared with you guys a little bit about the FOs that I have around the house, the ones that I'm posting as well as the ones that are just kind of lurking in the background here. And I'm happy to continue sharing things as I have time to bring them into the videos. But now I want to move on to the whips that I've got going, because I know especially those knitters out there are more interested probably in my knitting content than my crochet content. So the first thing I want to show you guys, I'm breaking my rule that I had going last video, because I was trying to organize myself by sharing things in how long they've been on the needles, but I'm feeling in the mood to talk about my Lento first, mostly because it doesn't feel like a lot's happening with it. So when I talked to you guys last, I actually hadn't made this much progress on the body, so I have made significant progress since we spoke last, but that was also last week when I made all this progress. We were out of town. As I mentioned in the opening, we were visiting Inks Lake and other natural parts of the hill country in Texas, and I'll try to post some video here too, but so this was my sort of like carry around and knit project, but then ran out of yarn. So you can see that on the body maybe you can't see, I've got yarn and cables craziness everywhere, but that's my yarn tail for the body. And I ran out of the ball that I had, so I quit working on this on our drive home from the hill country last weekend, and I have reconnected and started on the first sleeve. But because I don't have any DPNs in this size, it's a 6mm or number US 10. I don't have DPNs in this size, so I'm at the mercy of doing magic loop, or waiting until I acquire some DPNs. So I'm not really like feeling extremely motivated by this. The other thing is that I had to wind up the other hank of yarn that I had at the house before I could really get started on this. So I did wind that up and I did start on this, but I put it away and got distracted by my next whip, so haven't made much progress in Sleep Island, and it may be on hold until I finish the next whip, because that one is so close I can just taste it. So yeah, this is the Lento. Not very exciting at the moment because it's cables and craziness, and I don't really know what I'm doing with it right now. So it's just resting for this week, and this past week, not 2 weeks ago from our trip, but this past week I've really been spending more of my time working on the whip that's been on the needles the longest, which is what I'll show you right now. Okay, my Servette tee is a little crazy. It's actually not called a tee. What is it? Tank? I think maybe the Servette tank. So Servette means ice cream, and I apologize, I think one of my neighbors fired up their motorcycle. Hopefully that's not bothering you. You would think that they would know that we're filming or something, and quiet in the studio. But yeah, so here we have a hot mess. I feel like that's all of my projects right now, a hot mess of cables and cords and odds and ends. Let me see if I can get us organized here. Okay, so the very edge is actually, the bottom is in a sock. This tank is made bottom up, and then you do the straps and then you connect. So I'm like so close with this. I tried it on the other day. The pattern says to work in the round until you get to X length, and then you separate for the straps and do decreases working your way up. There is a beautiful, I don't know that you'll be able to see this up, you won't be able to see it on the front, but there is a beautiful like eyelet that's going on either side of the front and under the arms. So I've got the front done in the sense of what the pattern called for. When I tried this on earlier, I just had the fronts done, and it was way too short in the shoulders. It was looking I was looking extremely busty in it, which is not the goal for this tank. And so yeah, I've got some work to do. I snipped my yarn extremely long, so I have basically like 2 miniature yarn balls connected to these tops here, and I've just got my stitches on some cable needles here, and I'm hanging out here until I finish up the back, and then I'm gonna work the straps until I like the length and the fit of everything. So I've got the first of the 2 back straps done, and I'm working on the third now. I just started it this morning. So when I said, you know, it's so close that I can taste it, it really is feeling like it's almost there. Let's get this one out of the way. I'm sorry guys, this is not showing very well at all. Maybe I will get some like flat laid pictures and y'all can see, but will this work? Okay. So we've got that beautiful lace. I stole the lace from the Cascada tee and learned how to do it without increases, and put that in the back portion of my Servette tee tank. And so it's gonna lead from this like flowy cascade lace motif into these 2 triangular straps, and then they're gonna meet at the ones that already have mostly started, and we'll have a tank top done probably by next week. So I really wanted to have this done before I filmed today, but the reality is that if I'm not filming now, it's not gonna happen this week. I have a lot of commitments Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then my uncle will be back in town on Friday, so excuse me, I didn't want to have another week with no podcast and no updates. So here we are with the progress, and I want to say, I know for sure I hadn't done any sleeves when we spoke last. I don't think I have oh, here we go. This is my progress keeper from 2 weeks ago. So I've got this down here, all of this circular knitting, plus 3 straps. So I might have to post some pictures because I feel like I'm not doing this justice at all, but I've made a lot of progress and I'm very proud of it, and I cannot wait to show you guys. So that's exciting. I did give my mom her shirt that I was working on last month for the past 2 months. And as I was afraid, I mentioned to you guys last time that I was concerned that the shirt was going to be too big. It is too big, but I did a little bit of researching, and I think that, so it's superwash wool and lace weight linen held together. And so I know the superwash is likely to stretch, but it's superwash so you can wash it, and linen shrinks. And so I'm hoping that she'll wash it. I told her to launder it. She is a knitter as well. She's familiar with how to care for these types of items, so I'm hoping she'll toss it in the dryer. It will shrink up a little bit and fit her nicely. I did ask her if I could post a video of it, but or not a video, a photo of it, but I haven't gotten a really good photo from her. She is currently teaching full-time until the end of the semester, coming this spring. So when she has a little bit more bandwidth and margin in her life, I'm sure she'll do that for me. She'll get herself a picture of her wearing it, and I'll share it with you guys. Y'all saw the finished object when I posted it however many weeks ago, so nothing more to say about those. But I do have some other things to share with you. Some recent cast-ons. Sneaky cast-ons? Are they sneaky if I started them and didn't tell you guys about them? Maybe. Well, enough building it up. Let me grab them and show you. Okay, so this cast-on has only been on the needles for like 3 weeks, but I wasn't sure I was going to actually like follow through with it, so I didn't share it with you guys because I was like, at any moment I could hate all of this and frog it. And it's not even a finished object yet, so I don't feel like I cheated y'all by not telling you about it. This is it. And you're probably like, what is this? What are we looking at here? I can't tell. This is the face of a hare. And I know that that's probably a very strange way to introduce this, and it's probably not very illuminating in terms of what we're actually looking at. So let me explain. For my birthday back in October, my mother-in-law got me Knitted Animal Friends by Louise Crowtherd. I think that's how you're pronouncing her name. This is going to be coming in reverse because I'm in selfie mode, so I apologize, but I will post a link for this so you guys can see. I am making Tilly the hare. I also started on the fox pattern a couple months ago, but the fox pattern has like a more color work involved, and it is a very intricate pattern in the sense that there's lots of decreases, lots of increases. No 2 rows are the same, and so I really needed something, like I needed an easier win for this. And I have a sister-in-law who's having a baby soon, and she's very into the like precious beige, perfectly manicured nursery and all of that. Like, I love her aesthetic. It is more effort than I could do, but that's all her, and I think it would mean a ton to her to have a little bunny. So this is Tilly the hare. Hopefully you can see a little bit better. Maybe she's all white in this pattern. I am not making Tilly white. My hair is going to be a little brown bunny because I don't know, subliminal messages. It's a Sarah podcast has been talking about making her niece a blue bunny, and I know she loves brown, and then she started talking about making her some things, and she's following some different patterns. It's Little Cotton Rabbits, I think, is the creator that has those patterns. I do have some of her patterns. I even have her bunny rabbit pattern. But I wanted to use this book and these patterns because all of these dolls are exactly the same size, and I also have like an exotic animal version of this book. So I could make, you know, I think there's 8 different dolls in this pattern book and 8 in the other one. And so I have a lot more options and all in one book, and I was given these books, so I was like, I need to use these. Like, what's the point of asking for a gift if you're not going to use it? So I am making myself learn how to do these. They are a lot more challenging than my regular amigurumi from my crochet experience. They're a lot different even from like the goose that I showed you guys in my first videos. And knitting is just so much more complicated to shape things than crochet. Like crochet, I have been doing that for years, and I've been making crochet toys for years. And so even if I don't necessarily know the pattern, I can figure it out or I can sort of memorize it. Knitting is so much more challenging. And so this is all I have. I have a hair face. So the baby shower is soon, so I really need to get this one finished. But I'm working on teeny tiny needles. You sock knitters out there can appreciate this. I've got these teeny tiny chow goose. You can see like they're nothing. I think they're number 2 or a 2.75. And I know you can, you know, knit them like this and do just loops. But I'm actually, because these dolls are knitted flat, I'm just using them like regular knitting needles and passing it back and forth from needle to needle. So this is the very beginning. I have a yarn mustache. That's all. Oh, that's great. But I think this is the body. Yes, I'm fairly certain this is the body that I've started. I couldn't decide if I was going to do the ears or the body next, but I think that's the body because I need to build the momentum. So it doesn't look like much right now, but hopefully in the next couple of videos this will start to look like a hair. I cannot wait to have a little brown hair in my house and to be able to share it with you guys. So those are the things I've been knitting on this past 2 weeks, and it feels like I've made a ton of progress, and also it feels like I have nothing to show you guys. So I hope you don't mind that this episode was a little bit rambly, a little chaotic as far as the knitting content, but such has been my life this week, so bear with me. Since I've already shared with you guys all of the knitting I've been doing, I'd like to jump in now and talk a little bit more about my books. So book content, I have really been going through books. It has been, I don't want to say surprising, because I regularly have books going in the background when I'm driving, when I'm doing dishes, when I'm doing laundry, when I'm hanging out with my daughter, like even when I'm playing with her, depending on the book, I can still be like kind of listening to it, but mostly tuned in with my daughter. So this past week I had read 2 weeks actually. I just finished this book called The Mysterious Disappearance of Rudolf Diesel, which is a completely fascinating book. My husband's in the diesel industry. He works on heavy equipment, and so I just find it very fascinating to know about that kind of stuff. I love history. I love like I don't think I like thrillers. Like those are a little too intense for me, but I love learning about stuff. And so this book totally like so good. So it is about Rudolf Diesel, who invented the diesel engine, and the conspiracies that were involved in his disappearance. Was he murdered? Did he commit suicide? What happened to him? And that book kind of goes through the history of both who he was and his biography a little bit, as well as what happened or what might have happened to him in his sudden disappearance. I think if you Google him, his Wikipedia page says that he died at age 55 in September of 1913. So quite a long time ago, but it's recent enough history, and he was a well enough known person that there was newspaper articles, there was journals, there was a little bit of investigation, like just a really fascinating story. So even if you're not a history buff, even if you don't like nonfiction, I could not recommend this book more. And I know I butchered the name, so I will post it in the description down below because I can't remember the exact title and I have no clue who wrote it. But fantastic listen. The narrator did an amazing job. That I'm familiar with this narrator from other stories, and so I just really, really enjoyed it. Couldn't say enough good stuff about it, even if, like I said, a nonfiction isn't your thing. Check it out anyway. The other books that I got done or listened to this week was In the Company of Cheerful Women, and I think that's what it's called, and The World According to Bertie, and I think it's called The Happiness of Blue Shoes. All three of these books are by Alexander McCall Smith. I have raved about him in previous episodes in my book segments. He does an amazing job of writing fairly lighthearted, not to say that he's not talking about serious subject matters, but in a very lighthearted, everyday way. So the book about the blue shoes and then the cheerful women, again, I don't remember these names, so I will link them below, but those two books are part of the Number One Ladies Detective Agency set in Botswana, Africa, and they follow this woman and her detective agency, private inquiry agency. I want to say it's probably set in the 60s, but that is a completely uneducated guess. So I'm just going based on like the technology and what's talked about in that time frame. Maybe the 70s, I don't know. And also I'm not up to date on Botswanan history and politics, and this is honestly my first introduction to that culture. So wonderful, charming, fictional, cozy mystery type stories that observe everyday life, and I could not say enough about how wonderful they are. I think I've said wonderful like 18 times. And then The World According to Bertie is actually, I think it's the fourth book in the 44 Scotland Street series. These books were written, so the first two, I know for sure, were published as a serial in a Scottish newspaper. And the nice thing about something that's published as a serial is, one, it's very easy to like put up and pick up and put down, and you're not like really interrupting a whole lot. And even if you're not paying very close attention, you're always updated on the characters and reminded, okay, who's that person, what's going on, as necessary, but without being excessively repetitive. And I think that's one of the things I find amazing about this author, is that he's able to write really compelling, everyday characters and observe them in a very unique way, and to keep the story lighthearted and amusing, and also really bite-sized. Like, I don't know how he does that. I think maybe just the practice of writing, because I looked him up and he has like 50 books published, like so many. But anyway, The World According to Bertie follows a 6-year-old, and he lives with his parents and the other people that are part of that neighborhood community apartment condo complex, I think, and just their everyday lives and the crazy adventures that they find themselves in. But those books are lovely too if you need a cozy read. I think I read one other book this week, but I can't remember, and I have been rambling now for 6 minutes about books, so I'm gonna leave it here and just recommend those two authors. I will link everything below because mom brain and hostess and busyness. I can't remember it all, but if you made it this far, thank you so much. I love sharing with you guys everything I've got going this week. In the past few weeks, I cannot wait to share more because I have so many knitted and crocheted things around here that y'all have not seen. And of course, I cannot wait to cast on the next thing once I get these whips finished. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week or possibly 2 weeks, and I will catch up with you guys on the next one. Love you. Take care. Bye. That's all for now, folks. We'll see you next week. Okay, the only other project that I started this past week is this little doll here, who I am affectionately referring to Scrappy Sally. And Scrappy Sally is literally just that. She is, I went through my yarn stash with my sister-in-law last week and gave away some yarn, and I pulled out some odds and ends, some full skeins and partial little tiny balls of yarn, and said I am going to start getting through this. So because all of my knitting whips were in kind of a weird phase at that time, I needed something that I could just grab and take with me when I went walking. The past 2 weeks have been a little crazy, and so instead of trying to get those things in order so that I could go walking with them, I just decided I'd start something new. So this requires very little thinking for me because I have made this particular pattern. It's Toft UK's Imaginarium creature pattern book, and I call them aliens or monsters, but mostly I call them monsters, even though they're not scary. But she has long hair. I actually have my little hair tie on her just to keep it out of the way, but she's got long loopy hair. I put the safety eyes in, so now when we go out, I can just work on the body, and we'll continue on. We're going to do very basic arms and legs, nothing crazy or fancy, because this is just to use up yarn. I may give it to my sister. I may post it for sale, but to give you an idea of what the body's going to look like is it's this structure. So you saw the head portions, and so I just pretty much have all of the body and arms and legs and possibly tails to make. Not all of my little monsters have tails, but I think Scrappy Sally deserves a tail. I mean, in the spirit of using up yarn, right? So I don't know how much progress I'll have to share with her as the weeks go because she's really not a main focus, but she takes up very little space. She takes up no additional yarn in terms of purchasing yarn. I'm raiding my stash and using what I have to complete her, and so I have no intention in rushing with her, but it's a good way to use up stuff when my knitting's in like a weird phase or I'm not ready to cast anything on. I don't have anything that can like grab and go. I have that pattern memorized and I can take it almost anywhere, almost anytime. So that is the only other whip. Yeah, I think that's all. I had forgotten about her, but I did want to show you guys. We did some yard work this week, and yeah, it's just been really busy doing all kinds of stuff. So thanks for tuning in, and that's all for now, folks.